So today we're looking at mastery paths in Canvas. Mastery paths is Canvas's way, or one of the ways, of differentiating instruction for your students. The way that it works is you have one master assignment, for lack of a better term, that based on the score the students get on it, we'll send them through a variety of different paths that they can essentially take. So in order to use mastery paths, first thing is everything needs to be in the same module. So you can't have students do an assignment for one module that will then trigger them to look at assignments in different ones. They all have to be within the same module. So if you're going to use mastery paths, it's good to either have just one big module for the unit, or even better, maybe just to give its own module to each different kind of path that you're going to take. So you can put pretty much anything within mastery paths, but it does have to start with either an assignment or a quiz to begin with. It has to be something that the student can get a score on. You could also use a discussion board post too, but it does need to be something that they get a score on. Canvas does recommend, and I would also recommend, that if you can, to use an auto-graded quiz, just because then it automatically pops out the grade, you don't have to do anything, and the students are automatically set to go on their path. If you do an assignment or discussion board or a quiz with essay questions, they're going to have to wait until you manually grade those, put in the score so that Canvas knows, okay, the student got this score, so they're going to go down this path. So before you start setting up the actual mastery paths thing itself, you need to kind of think about, okay, what paths do I want my students to take based on what scores that they get? And you want to have 3 different paths that they can take, at most 3. You could go 2 if you wanted. So what I've got here, I've got reading number 1 and basic sample quiz. So these are going to be, let's say my students do poorly on my beginning assignment here. So if they do poorly, I want them to do these. So the basic sample quiz, or the reading one, that might have more detail. It may be more at a basic level, things like that, to try to bring those lower achievers up a little bit more and get them a little more growth to where they need to be. Then the basic sample quiz, since they're lower achieving to begin with, this may be a little more, again, on the basic side. For my reading number 2, those could be my more advanced students, so maybe this is going to send them off onto more difficult topics or challenges. Same with the advanced sample quiz. And then I might want everybody to do a final project. So I've got to put all of this stuff in the module first before I want to try to do anything with mastery paths. So as it's set right now, every student is going to get every one of these things. And if you want them to, that's fine. You can leave mastery paths alone. But we're going to do it with mastery paths, and you can kind of see how that's going to work. So to start the mastery paths thing, after you've got it all set up, you're going to go to that beginning assignment or that beginning quiz, the thing that's going to trigger it, where it's based off of the score that the student gets on this thing. They're going to go down this path. So you go to the assignment or the quiz, hit the edit button. Then up at the top, there's this Mastery Paths tab that you may have noticed throughout the rest of the class, but have never messed with. So we're going to mess with it today. So when you click on it, you can see there are 3 rows that pop up. These are the 3 different paths, essentially, that you can set up for students. And so you can see up here, this is how many total points that this quiz, assessment, whatever, is worth. So I know that I'm working with 10 points here. So the numbers down here are how many points students have to get in order to be in that row or that column. So the default is that if students get a 7 out of 10, they're going to do whatever is this column or this row tells them to do. Between a 4 and a 7 is going to be here, and then between 0 and 4 is going to be down here. So down here are going to be my most basic ones, and up top are going to be my most advanced ones. So let's start with the basic. So the way this works is you're going to need to hit the plus button, and that will add different things into that specific path. So I wanted to do, I had reading 1 as that. So you can either scroll through, or I'm going to type to try to find reading 1. I'm going to hit the check mark on that. And then I'm going to go through Oop, and I don't know why that's glitching like that. Okay, maybe I need to actually scroll through. So I'm going to have reading 1, and I wanted the basic sample quiz. So I'm going to click both of those. So we'll hit add item, and it'll add both of those to there. So I can see if the student gets between 0 and whatever this is set to, they're going to do reading number 1 and the basic sample quiz. So let's say for the next tier, I want them to get probably more than 4 out of 10 on this pre-assessment or whatever it is. So I'm going to bump this up. Let's say they're somewhat proficient. So I'm going to say if they get a 6 for the minimum passing score. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to pick out those assignments that I initially picked for the higher one. So I wanted the advanced sample quiz, and reading number 2 is right there. Add those items, and they're in there. Let's say this top one, these are for the kids that get, let's say, a 95. So I'm going to say 9.5 out of 10. So these are the kids who apparently already know what they're doing, and they don't need to do any of this. So I'm going to go ahead and have them just go straight to the final project. But I want all of the other kids to do the final project, so I'm going to actually go back in, and I'm going to add the final project sample. And you'll notice whenever I went back into this one, it had advanced sample quiz lined out because I've already got it selected, so you can't assign students the same thing twice. But you can assign the same thing into different rows or columns, or different rows. And then final sample assignment, or final project sample. All right, so as it's set up right now, based on the score the students get on this beginning assignment here, if they get a 9.5 out of 10 or higher, it's going to send them straight to just doing the final project sample. They're not going to have to do anything else. If they get between a 6 and a 9.5, they'll need to do these 3 things, and I'm going to reorder it. If you want to reorder things, all you have to do is just click and drag, and that'll move them around. So I'm going to have them do reading number 2. I'm going to give them the advanced sample quiz, and they're going to have to do the final project. Then if they get between a 0 and a 6, I'm giving them reading number 1. I'm giving them the basic sample quiz, and then they are doing the final project. So all of my students are still doing the final project. It's just what steps do I want them to take before they wind up getting there. So chances are these students, since they needed a little more assistance, their final project is probably going to be more basic, but based on how you have it set up, they could do just as well on it as the others. These maybe they get a little more creative with it, maybe they do more applications with it or something like that. But ultimately it's the same thing. Of course, you could have them do different projects if you really wanted to. That's one of the beautiful things about Mastery Paths. Another thing, if you wanted to give them more choice. So instead of forcing them, okay, you're going to do reading 1 and you're going to do the basic sample quiz and you're going to do final project, you can also, if you click on the ampersands, it'll open up an option where they can do or these things. So it'll give them the choice. So maybe I could have them do the reading number 2, or I could have them do this quiz, or they could do the final project as whatever they do. If you have the or set up, it's not going to penalize them for doing the things that, so let's say I had it set up like this, it's not going to penalize them if they do reading number 2 and they leave these 2 things alone, because the way you had it set up and the way you told them was they didn't have to do these 2 things. They could either do this or that or that. If I just have one or in there, then that means they could choose to either do the final project sample or they could do reading number 2 and the advanced sample quiz. So you can set up some flexibility in here too. You could maybe have it set up where you could have an assignment instead of final project sample, maybe it's video project sample, where instead of making, let's say this was a poster board, you could have it set up where they could also choose to do a video, where maybe you have a different rubric for that. But again, it's giving them a little more choice in how they want to show their learning or how they want to learn. So whenever you've got this all set up, you do need to make sure you hit the save button down here. This is not autosave, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. So we're going to hit save. And it'll take us back here. And so it immediately will show you the breakdown. So whenever you actually have this in your course and after students have started taking it, this will start filling up and showing you, okay, if you have, let's say 30 students, maybe 1 or 2 kids got into here. let's say 10 got in here and then the rest got in here, so the bars will fill up. It'll show you, rough percentage wise which students are doing which things. So if I go back home, now my module has changed. So it's showing me, okay, the students who got between a 6 and a 0 and a 6, they're going to be doing these two things. Students who got between a 6 and a 9.5, they're doing these. And then this one is set up as multiple because there are multiple paths that could get there. And so now when students go into this module to view it, what they're going to see is some of these things, like it says, all these things down here are locked until this is graded. So they don't necessarily know which one of these they're going to have to do. But whenever they take this assignment, once it gets scored, it's going to wind up opening those things for them. So that is Mastery Paths, and you can do this with any combination of pages, assignments, whatever. The only thing I would note is with pages, and I run into this every time I set this up, everything is default to be available in Mastery Paths except for pages. So if you click on a page and you go to edit, again, you would hopefully have something in here. Down at the bottom, there's this checkbox, Allow in Mastery Paths. By default, on pages, this is unchecked. So if you go through, you do your whole process for putting in whatever reading or whatever it is that you want to put in this page here. If you don't check that box, whenever you go into the settings to Mastery Paths, it's not going to show up as an option. So you definitely need to make sure that that is checked. So again, default, it looks like this. So just make sure you hit that check button, hit save, and it's going to be able to be seen in Mastery Paths so that you can choose it.